society in general, are big on respect. How can you be big on respect but choose who they respect?
There's a concept known as in-group and out-group. If person falls into the same group as us, we give them positive attributions. But if people don't fall in the same group as us, we exhibit negative qualities towards those people.
Maybe it's because there's a moral erosion going on at large scale in our society. People tend to see the younger generation as the worst version of themselves, right?
Albert Einstein said, education is not about what you learn, it's about how you think. But yet, people that are educated seem uneducated. Welcome to DrTovesCorner. Welcome to another episode of Scatteryan. To scatteryan is to articulate thoughts that are all over the place. And in this episode, we are going to be continuing our conversation on empathy within society, or lack of empathy within society. I've got the same guest from the previous episode, so please welcome back to Toves Corner, Professor Morris. How are you doing, Morris?
It's good. It's good to be back.
Yeah, welcome. Hopefully we have another
Thank you.
interesting, deep conversation. And also welcome my guy from another mother in another country, in another planet. Please welcome.
Another planet, man. Yeah.
Another cosmos.
I'm in a different universe of my own.
Exactly. Please welcome the deep thinker, Master
Thank you.
Professor Prince. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Hi, hello to my guy Morris, and I'm ready for another sensational.
Yes, we're back at it again.
Yes, come on.
All right. We're going to continue, obviously, the conversation we had in the previous episode where we're discussing empathy or lack of empathy, how people just think they can say whatever they like without considering other people's feeling or considering what the other person might think about them. So I'm going to start this episode by asking one simple question. Growing in our society, West Africa, because I can't just say Nigeria now, it's West Africa. I'm sure it will be the same across other parts of Africa, but I'm 100% sure this is Africa. There's this saying, dress how you want to be addressed.
That's right.
Dress how you want to be addressed. So where does empathy come in that situation? And I'm going to give an example because they say dress how you want to be addressed, and people have taken that saying literally, where if people don't look wearing a suit or wearing a buttoned up shirt, then that person is jobless, is useless, does not deserve any respect. You can insult that person, talk to the person anyhow. And if a lady is wearing a vest or a miniskirt, you can just talk to the person anyhow. When I was living in Kano, sometimes the children will be chasing down women that are just wearing short skirts and slapping their bum and things like that. And it's allowed because apparently you're not supposed to dress like that, you're supposed to cover up. So where does empathy come into that? Where does respect come into that? I will start with Prince this time because the last episode I started with Morris, so I will start with Prince.
Yes, I think our society, man, there are some things about society that is not cool, not good, and are molded. I think in most countries, in most African countries that used to practice female genital mutilation, they've been abolished, right? So there are some outmoded aspects of our culture that we shed off. And there are other aspects I think is outmoded we should shed off, and that's an example. There's a lack of openness and there's a lack of empathy and towards the diversity of different people. Now, the extent to which we have to be diverse and empathetic to different people, the extent to which you can do it is a subject of debate. But I think let's, because we are West Africans, then we can say that. Using where I'm from, Ghana, most of us could be more open-minded, more empathetic, more tolerant of the diversity and divergence in different people. Some things are not right, like how people dress. Like I've done this several times. I go to the bank sometimes. I can dress like this, wear in a t-shirt, and in a short. I'll go to the bank, and then they'll treat you like every other person. But let me put on what African print up and down. I put on some gold watch and a gold bracelet. Put my hand in my pocket, form like an organ, and then I go at pocket and I'm trying to articulate myself differently. And then, oh yes, our boss. The reception is different. It's just sometimes it's a bit unreal. If yesterday I was having this conversation with some friends of mine, do you have to be what people want to see, or you have to be yourself? And it went like in so many directions. But yeah, some aspects of our culture are more that we need to shut off. Seeing people as a certain way based on how they are dressed, because mostly people dress for reasons not because of what perhaps they are. There's elements of that still, but to just judge people or conclude on what a person's substance is based on just their appearance is basic, is rudimentary, is archaic thinking, in my view.
So before I bring Maurice in, what you said just made me remember when Mark Zuckerberg came to Nigeria, I think in between 2019 and 2021, I think. He came to Nigeria, obviously, he just wears t shirts wherever he's going to. And people were like, oh, look at a billionaire, he's wearing t shirts. And everyone around him was wearing suits. And they were all yabbing people that are wearing suits, which was funny to me because the same people that are saying that will be the people that will disrespect those that are in t shirts and respect those that
Mm,
are wearing suits.
rude.
So it's like
Big
hypocritical.
man
Once
like you, how
again,
can you be wearing t-shirt?
exactly. But then they were there praising Mark Zuckerberg for wearing t-shirts and people around him wearing suits. I just remember that scenario. Yeah, Maurice, what do you have to say about this dress, how you want to be addressed?
I think how we address people is also based on perceptions. It's based on, there is this implicit bias that comes with it, right? Because what we have is a situation whereby we have these unconscious automatic assumptions about people, and that's as a result of experiences that we've had over time and repeated exposure. So again, because we've exposed to a certain way or views over time, we begin to address people based on that. So let's say somebody is dressing and they want to be addressed as, they don't even see anything to it. So you put on something simple. You're wearing this because maybe the weather is hot. So you're wearing some skimpy dress and you're wearing some light outfit because number one, you like how that feels towards your skin. So you're not really thinking about if you're going to be addressed in a certain way. So what then happens is if we then address somebody based on a certain way, we are only going to address them based on our preconceived notions or this particular narrative of what that means. And that sometimes would, in several cases, differ from what the original intention of the person wearing the dress is. So that becomes a problem. That becomes a problem if how you're addressing me doesn't align with how I want to be addressed, because this is where perception then comes in. And then because you're not really empathetic enough, because remember, we don't really necessarily understand how that person is feeling when they put on that dress. So we're just basing it off our own understanding and knowledge based on our life experiences. But I think that notion is problematic, and I don't think we should how did you put it, address
How you
people
want.
how we should address people by how they dress.
Mm-hmm.
I think rather we should address people how they want to be addressed.
Oh, okay. Which makes sense. I like that. I like that take. In rap, they'll say that is a bar.
Right.
Address people how they want to be addressed. Which takes me back now to another conversation. Our society, West African society, I'll say society in general across the world, they are big on respect. Respect people. So how can you be big on respect, preach respect, but yet they choose who they respect? Isn't that like a contradiction in itself? You preach to people, respect others generally, treat people how you want to be treated, but yet at the same time, the level of disrespect to others is quite high. I don't know. What do you say to that? Yes, go ahead, Maurice.
I think one thing we need to look at is how we human group ourselves, right? So there's a concept known as in-group and out-group. So essentially, there is this unconsciousness in the human mind whereby we're trying to infuse ourselves with members of the same groups. And if this person falls into the same group as us, then we give them positive attribution. So we say this person is trustworthy, they are competent, and so on. But if these people don't fall in the same group as us, what then happens is we start to exhibit certain negative qualities towards those people. So we start to regard them as inferior, or there's just something off about this person just because you don't align with the person. So that kind of brings me to the question you asked about. So we need to be consciously aware of whether or not these people fall into our groups. Just because someone doesn't align with you or somebody doesn't look like you or doesn't think like you, doesn't fall into the same religious group as you or the same societal status as you, then we start to not favor them as much as we would people who we align with so much. So this is where recognizing, taking a conscious effort to always be in the moment and recognizing these thoughts when they come up. And so yeah, but we'll come back to that. I don't know what um
Prince.
Prince has to say.
Yeah, in groups, out groups, seeing people different when they are doing the out group as opposed to others, a thing. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just thinking, for me, it's a huge chunk of it comes down to our education. And I'm wondering, like, all I was thinking about is, could we engineer society to be different? And how would we have to do it? Like all of these things that you're saying, in groups, out groups, to what extent can we engineer people to at least fine, you have an in group and there's an out group, but you don't have to project the negative onto the out group. And to what extent can we engineer people not to be doing some of these things? That's the question that's running through my mind now. And some possible ways that can be done through education because of our backgrounds. But yeah, that's what all I would want to add here for now.
Yeah, but then speaking about education, we're all educated. The whole respect thing is educated. You hear it from all your religious teachings, you hear it from home. Respect people, treat others how you want to be treated, you know. Like how can you be preaching respect, but at the same time there's high level of disrespect? And speaking about in-group, out-group, how you treat people, isn't that in episode 4 and episode 5? We looked, I discussed fake it till you make it with different guests from a male perspective, female perspective, right? The reason why people can fake it till you make it in our society successfully is because of this perception of how they address people. Dress how you want to be addressed. If you dress like a rich person, automatically your chances of success is higher than if you just, want to be comfortable. So if we're saying respect people, but we're only respecting certain group of people, isn't that the reason why on social media there's a lot of cyberbullying? Because people choose who they respect. They only choose who they regard as either richer than them. I think Prince also mentioned about class or religion or wealth. People that are either richer than them, people that they feel are intellectually superior to them, and everyone else they just think we can just insult. Whatever you say, you be mumu. I don't know what the terminology of mumu is in Ghanaian colloquial saying. I don't know. What is it?
John, those
Yeah. We used to say jumbo.
yeah, probably that one. But yeah.
Yeah. Once again, where
Wait, can I
does
can I say one thing before you go on?
yeah, go on? Yeah.
Like we are being socialized and educated to respect people, and then we are being quote unquote educated with some values that we are not practicing. Maybe it's
Mhm.
because there's moral erosion going on a large scale in our societies. That is why people are being socialized a certain way and they are not living by it. Maybe it's moral erosion, I think. And most people, there's this view that people tend to see the younger generation as always the worst version of themselves, right? But would it
Mhm.
not also be a moral erosion? People you are told to respect, you are told to respect others, but you don't practice it. If you don't practice it, you don't live by the values that you espouse. Would there not be a moral erosion going on?
Yeah, it could be. Morris, that's a question for you. Is there no moral emotions erosion going on?
I'm
Are
not
we
really
losing our
sure.
values? I know a friend of mine, sorry to cut you, I know a friend of mine, a pastor, actually today's his birthday. He will say that everyone should go back to reading Ketsi for boys and girls and things will get better. Like our morals have just evaporated for whatever reason they are. But yeah,
I think people who say that, what they're doing is they're indirectly disregarding, in some way, the so-called morals that this younger generation are trying to instill.
mm,
So just because we do not agree with them or because we do not see eye to eye on certain levels. So that means you're wrong. And we get it a lot from the older generations. They think, a lot of them, not everyone, obviously, they think they have experience, they know better. You get the typical adage from an African parent, say, I gave birth to you. What an elder sees sitting down, the
Not sleep
child,
long
even if
enough.
you climb the tree, you wouldn't see it. And
which is true in
sometimes,
some cases.
in some cases, but sometimes it's
Yeah.
not always true.
Hmm.
And so I think it's a situation whereby there should be a constant dialogue whereby we both learn from each other. And let's not forget that over time, society dictates morals, and a lot of the times these tend to change over time. So we can't keep living on the past with the hope that things will return to the way they were. So that's just my take on it. But um
So speaking about dialogue, how can you dialogue with someone that when they don't agree with you, they call you stupid, idiot, you don't know what you're saying, you know sabi anything, or you are useless, you're worthless. How can you debate someone or people that don't want to listen or learn anything new?
Prince.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is where I would say that the moral erosion for me is a big one there. And also, I'm thinking, I don't know whether it's a whole it's a civil education or I don't get it. The extent to which there's no uh, dialogue and openness, and the extent to which people can freely dialogue on ideas without prejudice, without fear of being labeled
Mhm.
as dumb or whatever, right? How can that happen? For me, I'd like to run to education a lot. And I think you hinted at that in a bit, that our socialization is another form of education. But I'm looking at
Mhm.
maybe can we formally, like in the formal educational system, can we instill a bit more diversity and inclusion into it consciously? You see all of the fuss we are making about the SDG goals. If we can make the same fuss about diversity and inclusion, there are some dialogues that needs to be have in the public domain. And the place
Yes.
that they ought to begin is in our formal educational system, because that is where people are being consciously molded to turn out a certain way, right? Because if we leave it to society, we leave it to each family, then each family will just pass down what they see to be best. I'll raise my children the way I think is right, and I'll raise them to be open-minded and be willing to dialogue, be tolerant of divergence, and be inclusive as best as they can, right?
Mhm.
But what about the neighbor? How is the other person raising its
Yeah.
children and whatnot? I don't know. Maybe it's just the formal educational system. I'm also not sure whether it's because we are
Yeah.
in academia, so there's a bias to always see that what we do is the solution. But yeah,
So I was going to even pick up on that as well. But in terms of education, this current generation, I would say from the 80s or late 70s onwards till now, are the most educated group of individuals on the planet, right?
right.
And I saw something, a quote, whether it's Albert Einstein, that said, it's not a direct quote now, I'm paraphrasing. Education is not about what you learn, it's about how you think.
Mm,
So they're teaching you all these maths so that you can figure out how to solve problems. They teach you about structure of English sentence so you can speak, you can know how to articulate yourself properly. You learn biology so you know what's going on in your body, so you can think for yourself, some
mm,
critical reasoning. That's why the highest award in education is a doctor of philosophy and not the most brilliant maths person, because you're meant to think. You're a doctor of thinking, you're logical in nature. So if people are the most educated, which should automatically mean that they should be the most open-minded, the most open to having conversation with other people. But yet, this generation still seem the ones that are the most abusive and the most divisive and the most disrespectful compared to other generations. Because if you look at people that are 70s and 80s, when they have, unless they are irritated, no matter what you say to them, they'll just look at you and move on. But this generation, they can't do that. They can't just disagree with you and move on. So, Maurice, like, what do you have to say to all of this situation? Educated, but at the same time, seem the most
Yeah,
uneducated.
I would say, yeah, that I think the people that we, as we put it, portray those attitudes, I think they don't know better, right? Because you are only as good as the level of education that you've attained. So if you were raised in a certain way. So if you are taught in a certain way, chances are you're going to behave in that way.
I would like, before you go on, can you clarify what you mean by level of education? Is it like formal education or home education?
Both formal and informal. So if we go back to the informal one, home education, think about how those generations we're talking about, how they were raised. They were pretty much raised with, well, in our part of the world, I would say, with an iron fist, whereby there is corporal punishment when you do something. So we talk about respect, but then if you do something wrong, there isn't that much conversation. A lot of the times you're not even told the reasons behind why you shouldn't do certain things. They just said, obey me. And as a result of that, what we've had is a situation whereby people basically they just conform, but that's how they were raised. So they were raised in such a way whereby when they do something that is not right in the views of those people who say that it's not right, they're punished. There's like a punishment attached to it. So when you've grown up with that kind of upbringing, again, I always go back to foundational development, how you were raised when you were a child. For example, I remember a couple of weeks back, my nephew and nieces, they came over for Christmas, and you could see the dad basically telling the elder child, they say, go kiss your sister good night and take this and share it with your sister. He could have easily given the both of them separately, but say, share this with your sister. And even when the sister acts up in a certain way, say, no, don't do this, and you go back to reinforcing some of those positive attitudes we want them to imbue when they grow up. And so that's what happens, whereby I think it all stems from how we were raised, the level of understanding that we have. Chances are, if you're taught by a crappy teacher, you're going to be a crappy student anyway. So if we don't know better, we can't act better. So that's how I would put it. So sometimes I don't really blame them. I just think they don't know better.
Right. So, a couple of things I picked from what you've said so far. You said about how they're raised, basically in school, when they ask questions. If you don't have it, teacher will just beat you. And so, basically saying, you're stupid. So, don't you ask me any questions, no explanations. And then they bring that attitude to life or in social media, where if they don't agree with other people, they beat them. And this time it's an insult,
Yeah.
basically. But at the same time, the example you gave about your nephews and nieces sharing and caring for the sibling is the same thing on social media as well. People care for their family members. They will not insult their family members online. Never, ever. They will love and care for the family member, but everyone else can be insulted, right? Which takes us back to the question we had in the previous episode in terms of must you feel something to have empathy? Must it be my family member before I realize that I can't just give them low self esteem because I disagree with them? So, yeah, we can say it's education system. Yeah, we can say they don't know any better. How does that change? I don't know if education can change it. I don't know if family can change it. Like, where will people get empathy from? Is it going to be self-taught empathy, or do you have to wait for your pastor, priest, radio programming to come and start teaching you how to understand people? I'll come to you, Prince.
The social systems, the social institutions, sorry, would have to take an active role in it. But leaving it to the social institutions makes it complicated, which is what I like to. If I'm to pick two institutions, I'll perhaps say what the government does through civic education, and then also what our educational system does. For me, I put it down that because of my love for philosophy and what I think philosophy does, I think when people are more educated in philosophy, they understand the world better. They understand the world around them better, and then the remote world also a bit better. And more education in philosophy, I think, would be a big remedy to all of that. If people are educated in philosophy, they understand some knowledge in metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, position in the world, where the diverse views about how the world came about, the diverse views about different societies, things around ethics, different ethical systems, how other different cultures live, a bit of sociology and all of that, right? So I'm thinking that philosophy pale in our education system that we can sort of give students once they go through the education system. By the time they've come out, they've been educated so much about the world around them and then the remote world, the world that is so distant from them that they cannot see or interact with, that they are very much, they understand what it is to live in a diverse world. And the government also plays a role. I think the government can make a conscious effort and a more systematic effort to introduce the larger populace to more of the world than what is around them. Because mostly when you find people that are exposed and well traveled and have experienced different cultures, they are very tolerant of divergence. But then
Yeah.
if you find people who have experienced a monoculture, have lived in a small town and never been out, and I think those people tend to be less open. I'm not saying that the
Mm.
people like that are always certain type of people, but they tend to be less open. The people that have only been experienced with one religious system, one ethnic group, one race, when they experience others not like them, that is where what Boris said earlier on, the in-group, out-group dynamics play out a lot. And so the government can play an active role in systematically opening up the populace to more of the world. There was this show back in the 1970s in the US, Cosmos by Carl Sagan, which was about the universe and man place in the universe, how many planets there are, astronomy, all of that, right? And that was like it did help a lot. It opened the public's eye to more of the world. Okay, like every time I say, if once I get some loose millions, I'll take that show, translate into like several local languages and blast it on the radio, sorry, on the TV in Ghana. And I bet that would shape a lot of minds. So the government can make a systematic effort. That's one. An educational system, a formal educational system must inculcate more philosophy into it. When we are young,
Right.
we learn social studies. Our place in Ghana now they've changed the name of social studies in the primary education. It's now what our
Wow.
world and our place in the world, like genuinely opening the students up to more of the world and then educating them more in philosophy, I think would ground us. I don't know, but I that's my conviction. Formal educational modifications in terms of philosophy and then a bit more of the social philosophy and then the government systematic effort. I think that'll go a long way to engineer our society differently, you know.
Yeah,
Fair.
just to piggyback on what you said, I definitely agree with what you said. This is where the governments, like you've mentioned, and not just government, private players as well, could use this same media and technology. So nowadays we have informations at the palm of our fingers. So we could use this as a tool to enhance empathy development. So by exposing people to different perspectives, ensuring that the experience of people and the emotions that these people exhibit are also put out on display as well. For example, I think a study was done with kids that were exposed to certain characters through TV and media at an early age. They start to exhibit those characters that is being portrayed on the films and the programs that they're watching. So by
Mhm.
constantly exposing people in general to this, I think it would go a very long way to help develop empathy or more empathy towards, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
let
don't
me
agree
chip in
with.
this. Let me chip in
Go on.
this. I know you
Okay.
well, maybe I should wait for it here, but I just wanted to add this.
No, go for it.
Ultimately, each individual should take it upon themselves to be more open and diverse and what have you. And our social institutions, the custodians of knowledge and figures with followers and whatnot, anyone in a position to shape the minds of people should contribute to it. Individuals themselves should take some level of accountability. But to be able to achieve that macro level transformation is why I like to bring in the formal educational system and then the systematic efforts of government to engineer society differently. Please share your thoughts with us.
So
That
just
Yeah.
before you do, just one
All
last
right.
one. Okay. So remember when we talked about cognitive and intellectual empathy. So this is where as individuals, we need to find ways to leverage both capabilities. We need to ensure that we use the intellectual part of the conversation to help us relate more with experiences that we are not familiar with. And then the emotional empathy then also helps us to, well, obviously because we can feel it, then we can relate more with it. But I think we need to also be able to leverage both aspects as well. But yeah, go on.
All right then. I'm forgetting half of it, but I just still remember two. First thing, First things first. Personally, I don't buy into the TV and radio one. I don't. They're called TV program and radio program in the first place. I don't want people to be programmed. I want people to be free in the first place. So I don't buy into it. I'm not saying don't watch TV. If you want to watch TV, go ahead and watch TV. It's your life. Do your thing. I'm just saying I'm conscious of what I watch. The other point I agree with what Prince said is terms of like sociology. I think one of the reasons why I'm more open-minded was in A levels, I did sociology. That first of all opened my mind to ask questions that it's not only about you. What you experience is different from someone else's experience. You don't understand how they're socialized, you don't know their circumstances. So give people a break. So I agree that sociology, teaching people sociology more, especially like primary, secondary school, helping them to understand and be more philosophical in nature, might change how people view the world. I agree with that. I was going to ask, what about gender roles in the home? Like, where does respect come into this? You don't have to talk about your personal opinion on things, but just a general conversation, gender roles. Where does respect come into this? Where does empathy come into this, Maurice?
I'll just keep it simple.
Please
I
do.
think we should challenge whatever assumptions is always put before us. That's one. And also, we should be able to, because a lot of the time there's this gender stereotypes. And as a result of these stereotypes, I talked earlier about how men tend to suppress empathy, and then women are seen to basically overextend it. So the goal would be to challenge some of these existing stereotypes that we have. And yeah, so I think for gender roles, we should also be mindful about what we teach our kids growing up. Again, even not just our kids, the type of conversation we have with our family members, our friends, in terms of perpetuating those negative stereotypes when it comes to expressing empathy. And so I think that's also another important aspect as well. And also, we should put humanity first. I always try as much as I can personally to give people the benefit of the doubt. The goal would be to think first before we act. So we think first because sometimes we could fall into this emotional trap. And yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's why the professor. Look at you trying to distract me from my point. I'm not going to buy it.
Oh,
You were
no, shit.
masterful at it as well, the Professor Morris. But we'll leave it at that. Nice cop out, but you've not answered the question. I'll come back
Okay,
and
no
ask you again.
worries. Keep going.
Yes, Mr. Prince, please do
Right.
not cop out.
No, not at all.
Yeah, what do you think about where does empathy come in
Yes.
into in gender roles and
Empathy, gender roles, all of that.
relationships?
Now,
Yes.
I have a very definite opinion on this, and I'll be direct with it as well. Yes, respect, empathy, these are values that are important in every home, and I think every home ought to have these values. When it comes to the question of gender roles, I think that, from my perspective, there are gender roles. I think nature has predisposed us for there to be gender roles.
Nature or nurture?
I'm sorry, nature has
Yeah.
predisposed us for there to be gender roles. From my
Can you expand on
Let
it
me
just a
expand on
bit?
it
Yeah.
slightly. Nature has predisposed
Yeah.
us for there to be gender roles in the sense that this is it. Women can get pregnant, men cannot, right? And then nature has made it such a way that men, on the average, are relatively stronger than women. And so there are some things that men can do better than women. That's my perspective. And the fact that women can get pregnant and men cannot means that if women bear their children or their offspring, they will be relatively better disposed to nurture or be primary caregivers than the men. That's that. And so that's why I say that there are gender roles and nature has predisposed us for us to play certain gender roles better. All right. So that's how I see it. Also, I see gender roles a bit as division of labor in economics. Okay. There's a lot that needs to be done in every home or in every society, and we need to divide the labor. In a home, there's some things that has to be done, and then the roles need to be shared. So if there's division of labor in economics or in the factory or in the company, that's acceptable. Why can there not be division of labor, i.e. gender roles in their homes as well? Okay, so from my perspective, there's gender roles, nature predisposes us for there to be gender roles, and it's quite efficient also if there are gender roles because it helps us to be more economical in how we utilize resources. And in that respect, if there are gender roles, then there ought to be respect about whatever role that each person, each gender is playing, and we have to be empathetic also. There are some extremes that I think can be looked at in a black and white manner, and there are some gray areas that I think for those gray areas, every home needs to find what it is that works for them. All right. So, for instance, maybe in my home, I would do all the ironing because I consider that to be part of my roles in the home. In another home, maybe the woman will do all of it. That's if it works for them, each to their own. All right. But there are some extremes in terms of the gender roles that I think can be established, and there are some gray areas that each home ought to iron out how they are going to go around it. Like I said, it to me is like division of labor. We have to divide the
Right.
effort and apportion it, and everyone would excel at a particular
Please bear with me, Maurice. I can see you smiling. You're ready to go.
No, I'm
One
not.
second. Yes.
No, go on.
I think, yes, what you've explained, fair enough, but that's not the context I was trying to talk about.
right.
That's not the, I was
Maybe I
bringing empathy
misunderstood
into
you,
it.
please.
Yes, you're passionate. I like that passion.
Speaking about gender roles.
Yeah, I was talking about like empathy in terms of support, right? Yes, there's defined, like you said, every household have their own defined or arranged gender roles. What this person is going to do, what this person is going to do,
That's right.
right? So where does empathy come into in terms of if one person is tired or one person is ill and cannot do their role, why should the other person be forced to do that role? Like why don't people support each other? So for example, if the gender role in the house is that the mother should be more carry the baby, why can't the husband or partner in some situations try to help? Or in a situation whereby the gender role for the man is to pay all the bills, provide everything, why can't there be situations whereby the lady or wife, partner, or whatever supports the man in some situation? Where does empathy come into gender roles? I think that's the question I
Okay.
was kind
Please,
of.
let me see. Let me give you another shot and see if I answer your questions. For me, in
Don't give
that,
me a short, give me a long one. It's podcast.
I know, right? In that context, I would say empathy is very key into it. When it comes to gender roles in the home, both partners need to be empathetic towards each other, right? They are gender roles, but they are not cast in stone, or they're not set in stone that they cannot be switched around. I think
Yeah.
just like division of labor, others will excel at other roles more than other people, right? However, in the same context of division of labor, when the person that is excellent at the role is not available to do it or anything hinders them, then or someone else needs to fill in for them. All right. So from how I see it, empathy is quite key in their homes because partners need to understand each other in terms of what role that they are playing, how will they do it, and that way, if they are ever in a position of not being able to play their assigned gender role, then the other partner also be able to slot in. For that's me. I think for me, gender roles, there are some extremes, especially the ones that are nature backed, right? But aside from the ones that are nature backed, for me, all the other gender roles are very fluid and they can be switched and swapped around. The man can be the primary financial muscle in the home, or the woman could also completely do that. Each to their own. That empathy is very key, and it's key for me in my worldview because the gender roles, aside the extremes, like I said, are nature, grounded in nature. The rest are very fluid, and so empathy becomes key in the sense that since the gender roles could be switching from one person to the other, and they can be changed in terms of who is doing what. Empathy is key. If we are empathetic towards each other, then we can craft a system where each person is always playing a gender role that will make us thrive together. Because that's my best attempt at answering your question. If I feel that answering it, then I have to do my second reset.
No failure, no failure. We are not in the Kenyan society. Fair enough. Yeah, Maurice, you want to come in? I could see you smiling.
No.
Yeah.
I
He will give us a very evidence-backed explanation soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, I think you said it all. I think it's all about having a balance. Okay. And again, when it comes to decision making, there should be a balance. I would personally say there is no gender specific role to a certain extent, but that's a different long conversation. So maybe we'll talk about
We'll
it
leave it
another
for you.
time. We'll talk about that another time. But essentially, I think the goal for me, what I would like to say is we as individuals as human, both males and females, should always try to challenge those gender norms that are restrictive. That's what I'll say. There are certain roles that the way it's been portrayed that the father or the mother has to do it. I think the goal is to challenge some of those things. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to disagree or agree, but
or
just
abuse
think
them.
about it. Exactly. So we think about it and then we challenge them. But yes, but again, think first and then act later.
No, thank you very much. And if you're wondering where that question came from, please check out episode 6, Boys with Boys, on DrTovesCorner on YouTube or any Scatayam podcast on all platforms. Remember, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and leave your opinion and comment as well. We would like to discuss them in a future show. The last question I have for today, thank you, first of all, thank you. I appreciate your time for staying this long. The last question I have for today is cyberbullying. Like, where does empathy come into play in cyberbullying? What role can empathy play in cyberbullying, Prince?
Yeah. When I look at it, this is things like cyberbullying that makes me always run to macro solutions towards making society more diverse and inclusive, right? Because with the issue of cyberbullying is ultra difficult to be regulated. Okay. But for instance, there's been attempts by the social media companies to try and regulate the language used and
Mm-hmm.
then delete certain content. The people are so innovative that they can most of these apps are in a foreign language, right? They can do
Mm-hmm.
insulting, say in my language, Tree, or in Yoruba, or in other
Mm-hmm.
languages that the AI cannot pick up.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's the people that need to be shaped in terms of their thinking and then their attitudes. When the government makes that systematic efforts across society to make us more diverse and inclusive, that will help. Your educational system is doing that, that will help. Our social institutions and all the other custodians of knowledge, those that have influence of the populace, should also do a bit of that. But empathy is very key with cyberbullying. How can you go online with your own views and opinions and expect that the millions of people online should have the same views and opinions as you, especially when
Yeah.
almost everything that exists has varieties and you happen to be a particular strand. Like if you belong to a different race, a different social class, you live in a particular corner of the world, and people are also like in their own universes. So for me, I just cannot wrap my head around how people cannot be open-minded and not be empathetic, especially online. That's like a marketplace for diversity. So empathy is very key. Going online, I think anyone that's online trying to interact with other people, you want to exercise a high level of empathy. That way, I think it even gives you a better experience online. So empathy for me is very key, and like anyone that's online ought to practice that. And then also obviously be careful about the cyber bullies and know when to disengage with them. I remember once I was being cyber bullied on LinkedIn, like someone was just messaging me and attacking me about things. I just
Mm.
responded once that, okay, I'm sorry, I have to disengage with you and I have to disconnect with you because of how you're coming at me. And uh, that was it. So you need to learn who these cyberbullies are and their terms and understand it. And I think also sometimes people don't even know that they are cyberbullies. They
True.
think that they are just being them. They're going about their normal business, but they don't know they're cyberbullying. Empathy is key. We need to be conscious. We need to expose ourselves. But yeah, I don't know. Empathy is key. That's just a hodgepodge of an answer, but I hope there's some sense in there.
No. Hodgepodge, I like it. I'll keep it out. I'm using it for future shows.
Yeah,
Thank you for that contribution. Yes, Maurice.
I think we should also be aware that emotions can spread, especially in the social media network of today. So you can spread emotions, both positive and negative emotions. So we should also be aware that some of these attitudes that we are portraying on social media can also spread because again, if this keeps being reinforced, sometimes people just see it as a norm, and that could be a very major problem. So that's one thing. Let's be critical thinkers. Let's also try and educate ourselves about the other side of the story that you seem to be opposing so strongly. Just take a little bit of time, do some research to see if you can understand it from, again, this is where intellectual
Empathy.
empathy comes in. So try and see it from their own perspective as well. And also, another thing is people tend to focus on the negatives. And one thing is, we talked about in groups and out group. Another thing we should emphasize on is to why not highlight some of the shared goals or the shared mutual understanding that we have on certain aspects, because it's easy to focus on areas where we disagree. How about the areas that we do agree? So those shared goals promotes a situation whereby this humanity then comes out. This would be some of my summary or key takeaway based on the conversations we've had so far. But
Yes.
thank you both for your insightful comments, and
Yeah. Thank you
it
for
is
trying to
good.
round up my show.
I thought that coming.
Right. But yeah, thank you. First of all, everything we've said so far comes down to empathy. So you can't do it without empathy. Trying to understand, asking questions, etc. That's the summary of it. Everyone, if you've enjoyed the episode, give us a thumbs up. You can also do it if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other platforms. You can also give a thumbs up, and that way that will increase our visibility to other people as well and help us grow this community that we are trying to build. Thank you very much, Maurice, for your time. Thank you, Prince, for your time. And please support them in whatever they're doing in their platforms. Prince, where can they find you?
Yeah. So I think, like you said, maybe you post my socials in the comment section. I'm available LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. It's Dr. Prince on all the platforms except in LinkedIn. That's Prince Okowa. And yeah, maybe very geeky, so I stick to it. But it's the what I'm very keen on hearing from people is their comments and rebuttals to some of the things that we've said, and then hopefully in future we can convene and then chop some of these things off.
Right, thank you. And Maurice, where can they find you, sir?
Same always. Again, I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but yes, but I'm there. I'll try and be
He's
more
very
active there
coded.
as well. But yes, but yeah, it has been good. So again, these are our thoughts. Sometimes we can only speak based on our understanding. So
Sure.
obviously there would be differences in ideas or opinions. Feel free leave them in the comment section. This is
Mhm.
us just saying it as we know.
That's right.
But again, insights from you guys will be very helpful. But yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Please leave them in the comment section below. And if you're listening on audio platforms or Spotify, you can leave a comment. I don't know much about Apple Podcasts. You can also leave them on our socials, which is at DrTovesCorner on Instagram, Facebook, and X, and at It's Dr. Toves Corner on TikTok. Until the next episode, everyone, use your brain. SCFR.
Use your brain.